You're listening to Tapestry, a podcast by a music lover for music lovers. I'm your host, Kelly. Join me as I learn more about the common thread that weaves throughout our lives, music. Welcome to episode 10 of Tapestry. On this episode, I chat with Joey Frevola, a multi-talented musician currently living in Nashville. Joey keeps himself busy by playing guitar for the UK-based prog rock group Kyros, the American prog metal act Edge of Reality, and also writes his own solo material. We cover topics such as the challenges he faces being an active member of a band that's in a different country, composing film scores, and why one of his favorite albums is one that hasn't even been released yet. You're listening to Footsteps off Joey's recent solo album, Gone. Joey, thank you for agreeing to be on Tapestry. I'm really excited to actually have you as officially kind of I've had like one other like specifically prog guest, so I'm kind of pumped because that's my jam. But
nice. Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on. So I'm chatting with Joey Frevola, and you were the guitarist for lots of stuff, but I think anybody listening might know you best from your role in Kyros. And you're also the guitarist of Edge of Reality, and you just put out a really stellar solo album called Gone. So I know you kind of wanted the focus to be on Gone, but I'm going to definitely ask you plenty of stuff about everything you do. So
sure.
I have so many questions, really, but
ask away.
Yeah, so to me, so I know Kyros and Edge of Reality are for the most part what you could really describe as like modern progressive rock, modern progressive metal, kind of, you know, Haken, Frost, IQ, that sort of stuff. But your solo album to me kind of took a different turn. It's definitely proggy in a lot of ways, but you sort of incorporated like piano and all these other things that are a lot more quiet and a lot less, maybe a little bit less technical. How did you end up going that direction?
It was mainly just the storyline kind of put this sound in my head that is the sound of the album. I guess Robin, Kyros' drummer and the guy who played drums on Gone as well, described it when he was listening to the demos as industrial folk, which I kind of like that description. Yeah, because the story is very much a cityscape, just like the cover. Like that's like the key image of what I want you to be thinking of location wise when you're hearing the whole album. So for whatever reason, that's just how my brain interprets that location, is that kind of sound.
Okay. Yeah, and it's what I really like about it as a true album lover and an album listener, you know, start to finish, there in typical prog fashion, there's a lot of recurring callbacks and a lot of recurring themes. And so I think I had in my notes here, basically, isn't the concept something along the lines of somebody is lost and they're trying to be found? Could you elaborate on the concept behind that?
Yeah, that is a way to describe it. Basically, what the premise is that the story begins with a city that is inexplicably completely empty apart from one person. And we begin with that person just kind of not sure what's going on, looking around the city. He's like, is anyone here? What is going on? He kind of has this kind of like, isn't this interesting attitude at first, but gradually as it sets in, he's like, this is kind of bad. I don't want to be alone in the world. And then eventually he discovers that there is another person, but he has no way of communicating with him because he's basically invisible.
Okay. Yeah, like, well, I know like the song Rooftops, I kind of interpret that as like an escape sort of thing. And I mean, I just have so many questions about how you came up with that story, because it is a really interesting one. It's very like, there's sort of this empty feeling at the beginning, and then to me, it sort of develops into this triumphant thing as the story progresses.
Yeah, especially Rooftops, because Rooftops is actually a flashback to before everyone disappears. it's kind of him like in his head going back and kind of finding solace in the people he used to hang out with, basically.
Okay, so now that you said that, let me ask you one question first. So is that inspired by something from your real life? Like, because I know that you grew up in Florida, correct?
That's correct.
And then you're in Tennessee now. So is any of that story related to having to leave friends behind and kind of moving on with your life?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of autobiographicalness to the more or less the tone and the not necessarily the plot, but more just the way the characters react to the plot is very indicative of my social life, I guess. It's kind of hard to explain without just giving away the whole story, which I kind of don't want to do. But
Okay.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Well, you should go listen to the album, everybody, because it is really great. It is so worth a listen. But okay, well,
It's all good.
I can move on to other questions without spoiler alerting your entire solo album. But yeah, so
Sure.
I'm gonna take a step back here and just talk about you as a guitarist. So you're obviously involved in a lot of different projects, but when did you start playing guitar, and what kind of drew you to guitar in particular?
Sure. Okay, so I started playing guitar. Well, it's a two-layered answer because I first, quote unquote, started playing guitar when I was 8, which meant that I was a child who, on a whim, said I would like a guitar for my birthday and I would like to start taking lessons, which went absolutely nowhere because I didn't want to practice. I didn't care about doing that. So I took lessons and got absolutely nothing out of it until when I was 12. I was in this school group with a friend of mine named Logan at the time, and he also just recently started playing guitar, and he was like, "Dude, check it out! I learned Crazy Train on guitar," and I never even heard this song before, and so he plays that opening riff, the for me, and I was like, "That's the coolest thing I've ever heard. Please teach me that." And he said no. So
Wow,
that was pretty much me. And then I went home and I taught it myself, and I never looked back. So I play guitar out of spite. That's pretty much my whole story.
I was going to say, yeah. So you've gotten to essentially tour with a large up-and-coming prog rock band in the UK and Germany, and you're doing this successful solo work. How often do you think, like,
well, I don't really think about it at all because we became really good friends after that. Actually, he was like my first real jamming buddy, and we were the kind of people who we came up with about 10 different bands that we were both in, and we would just get together and write music all throughout the night. Really, really hilariously bad music because neither of us knew what music was. We were like 12, so.
I was going to say, so this was still when you were 12. You were just kind of like figuring it out as you went, sort of.
From around the age of 12 to 15 or so, we were like best guitar buds. And then he moved away, and we haven't really kept in touch, which is kind of a shame.
Well, maybe you can long distance jam or something, but
yep. I don't even know if he still plays.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of people in the prog world, you tend to have a lot of technically advanced skill on your instrument, and a lot of times you find that you're a multi-instrumentalist. But have you pretty much just done guitar your whole life?
No, I've fallen down that path too. Actually, on Gone, I played guitar, bass, and keys.
Okay, I couldn't remember which parts of it you did. So this is truly a solo venture in every sense of the word, except for drums.
Yeah, drums and vocals, and some more orchestral stuff, which I got friends to do.
When did you start learning the other stuff? Did you just kind of do it as like I'm going to be able to accompany myself in the future sort of thing?
Kind of, yeah. Well, I started learning, again, what made me realize that I was capable of learning to play drums was actually playing Rock Band.
Every person on my show, I kid you not, every person on my show either has Rock Band.
Really?
Okay, you can see behind me. That's why I have a drum set now.
Ooh.
It was totally Rock Band, and
it works.
Yeah, it does. It teaches you the
basics
and
exactly
lining it up with what's actually going on in the music. That's awesome.
Yeah, I remember vividly actually because I got pretty good at Rock Band. I could play most of the songs in Rock Band 2, specifically on Expert.
Yep.
And then I think I was at a friend's house, or I think I might have been actually at church for worship band because I used to do that a lot in high school. Was this high school? I don't know. And I just kind of remember looking at the drum kit and in my head going, I think I could play chop suey right now. And then I did, and I remembered all of it, and it like was obvious to me like what the drums were, like just listening, just kind of going through like what I was supposed to hit at every time, and I was like, I can play drums, so that was cool.
Okay, great, perfect. Yeah, that's so funny because I had to get over that hump myself. I was like, because I played wind instruments and brass and stuff, so I'm kind of like, okay, I am a musician. I can give myself that title, but I'm like, I'm not really a drummer yet. Like, when am I a real drummer in air quotes? And I started on Rock Band, but it's like you can pretty easily translate that skill to a real drum set, and I think I have. So,
Nice.
did you grow up listening to the type of stuff you play now? Like I'm expecting that your parents loved Jethro Tull and Rush or something, or did you like grow into that on your own?
It was actually mostly the other way around. I kind of got my parents into prog, which is kind of backwards.
Okay.
It's not entirely, well, my
Yeah.
dad was a big Rush fan, back in their heyday, and that never really left. But it was also like I think he wasn't like enough of a fanatic to be like, okay, Joey, I'm sitting you down listening to Rush. Like a lot of my friends have gotten into Rush for that reason. So I actually I discovered Rush from, I'm going to keep using video games, Guitar Hero 2. They had YYZ on there.
Yep.
And that corresponded around the time where I was getting my first guitar teacher, which was maybe like a year and a half into me starting to play guitar seriously. And I said, hey, teach me YYZ. It's a cool song that I like on Guitar Hero. And he was like, okay, I'll think about it. And then next week he comes back with Limelight, which I'd never heard before. And I heard that song and I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever heard in my young life.
Yeah. Rock Band was the gateway for all that stuff too. Like I had no idea who Rush was. I mean, I might have heard Tom Sawyer at some point in my life, but I certainly didn't know that it was Rush. Well, did you have a lot of guitar influences growing up? Like, who were the people you looked up to as players?
Yes, immediately upon starting to take guitar seriously, I immediately went straight for Dragon Force. That was like, that band, when you like hear something and your brain has no way of understanding what you're hearing in the best way. That's kind of how it was. I was like, this is what guitar can sound like. I can't even wrap my head around this. I want to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And again, I found them through, I used to play, I still play DDR a lot. And
oh man, we're kindred spirits.
Yes.
So did I.
And did you ever play Flash Revolution? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that used to be just like random. If I had nothing to do, I just go on web browser and just play that all the time. And Fury of the Storm, which was on there, and I pretty much turned that on, and the arrows just went, and I was like, I can't even read this, but I didn't even care because I just started listening to it, and I was like, what is happening?
Yeah, oh man, that is such a small world because Through the Fire and the Flames was in Guitar Hero 2, I think, and I would always go over to my buddy, or 3, I would go over to my friend's house, and the older brother was like, of course now he listens to bands like Ed Guy, and he still listens to Dragon Force, and he's shredding on this thing, and I'm like, I'll never be able to do that. So and Jordan by Buckethead, all the Holy Grail songs on Guitar Hero and Rock Band. Man, that's crazy. I keep saying like it's practically you pass the pre-interview if you have played Rock Band. That's how you get to be on my show. But okay, so you definitely have that background going for you, just the crazy technical stuff. So you ended up going to Belmont, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So what drew you to Belmont specifically? Because it sounds like all the people that I've talked to now, I don't know a lot about the reputation of it, but it is a pretty good music school, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the most prestigious ones in the U.S. It kind of, I don't know if this is exactly true, but certainly when I was looking into colleges, it was always framed for me this way. It's like there's Berkeley, and then right under that is Belmont.
Mm-hmm.
And
okay, good. I'm glad I know
I got
that
into Berkeley as well, but Berkeley is so expensive.
Yeah, and I feel like Berkeley has more of a kind of jazz emphasis, at least in how they sort of train.
Yeah,
people.
It's definitely, jazz is a big part of it, but Berkeley also just does everything. Like you can go there for any musical, anything you want, and that was really cool and it was interesting. But I kind of didn't like Boston as much as Nashville as a place. And
sorry, don't be offended by my mug that says,
you're good.
That says Boston on it. I wanted to go to school in Nashville actually myself, so
oh really?
Yeah, I wanted to go to Vanderbilt, but my my math SAT scores were not quite up to par. So
Oh,
great city though, really, really.
where did you go? Where did you end up going?
I went to Ohio U instead.
Nice.
So, but Nashville is a great city, and
Yeah.
so okay, so you end up at Belmont. Are you like immediately overrun with the fact that everything there is country music, or is that just an outdated myth that I need to get over and
It's a half.
Be uneducated?
I would say it's a half truth. It's a lot of it is country music, and that's kind of the basis of where everything stems from in Nashville. Like I don't know, if you've obviously been to Nashville, I would think, because you said it's a good city. Did you go down Broadway at all?
I don't remember doing it. I ate at the Loveless Cafe. Yeah. I went to Vanderbilt's campus, and I mostly stayed like in that general university area.
Okay, gotcha. Well, if you ever go down Broadway, any time of the day, every bar has a band playing.
Oh, cool. Country or not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, country or not, but most of it is country, and it's all like pretty much famous covers of one sort or another. But it can range from like I've played Enter Sandman down there, so.
Nice. Okay, so you end up at Belmont. Did you go and like study guitar as your focus, or go through the whole rigmarole of general music education?
It was all of that. I was a guitar major with an emphasis in composition for the first year I was there. Which in retrospect, I kind of wish I was just a composition major, because that's kind of where I'm at right now. Mm-hmm. And the guitar program there it's good. I learned a lot from it, but there's also a lot of nonsense you have to wade through. That is kind of like that feels like a waste of time in retrospect. So
right. Yeah, I think a lot of colleges like that too. I had to do that in my program as well, and I think it's just we got to make you a well-rounded graduate and individual. But
and that's why you've got to take. That's why you have to take U.S. history. Yeah.
Didgeridoo 101.
We had to take a lot of class piano, which was actually good. I'm happy they made us do that, but.
Well, so were you already coming from like a theory background? Because I imagine to be a good composer, you do have to get through all of that really technical stuff. Did you already have a good bit of that going in, or?
Yeah, I learned a lot of theory because I took AP music theory in high school actually, which I was one of the 2 students who passed, which was not that much of a credit on me. That test was really hard, especially at that time, because such a big part of that test is ear training. You know, like being able to hear what intervals are just by hearing them, or being able to take dictation. So like you hear a melody and you have to write it out in sheet music just by hearing it. Yeah. That's hard. It's especially for me at that time, because my ears were garbage. But that got a lot easier as Belmont went on. But yeah, so I had pretty good theory background, but I learned a lot more in Belmont because I got to take 4 semesters of it. Learn so much stuff that I don't even like think about now, but it was really cool to learn.
That's what kind of makes or breaks a lot of music majors, I think, is oral training and everything. But okay, so you're so as you're at college and everything, this is kind of the connection to me, I guess, now where I came in, or at least knowing about you. So when did you meet Jesse and Bowman and all the people from Lines in the Sky? I'm really curious about that connection because now they've collaborated with you on your album.
Yeah, so I met Jesse Brock. We had a class. Okay, so actually my second year of Belmont, I took up a second major. I started doing dual majoring in audio engineering as well as the guitar composition stuff.
Okay. Which
even to this day is Jesse's bread and butter. Like that's pretty much his world. Mm-hmm. And we had a class called demo production together where we basically never spoke to each other, but he was there. I remember him being there, and he remembers me being there because after I joined Kyros and left Nashville for a while, when I came back here, we quickly were put on a project together where we had to learn a periphery song. He had to sing a periphery song. I had to learn it on guitar for someone else's recital, our mutual friend's Belmont recital. And we were both kind of like, you from you.
Cool.
Yeah. And, because I heard him sing that stuff, which is insane to sing. I was like, do you want to be in my band? And he was like, sure, I'll be in your band. And that's pretty much what happened.
I've only met Jesse once, and he was thrilled to meet a fan of Lines in the Sky. I think he was like absolutely dumbfounded that anybody had heard of them, let alone in Pittsburgh. And I was like,
"That's awesome!
You're one of the best bands I've heard in the past 5 years." And he was just like, "Oh my god, holy shit!" But
I can totally just hear him saying that.
No, he was like, he like shook my hand. I'm like, what the hell? Like, I just watched you perform and I was blown away, and you're like shaking my hand, but whatever.
How long ago was that?
But that was back in, I think it was, oh my God, I'm terrible with dates, but I met Jesse and Bowman when they played with, you probably know Austin Klinger too?
Yeah.
Yeah, with his band, A Notion of Silence, and they were opening for, God, who was it? It was Strawberry Girls, Night Verses, and there's a Pittsburgh-based band called Nashville that was playing there too, and those guys happened to be in Pittsburgh, I think, so it just like worked out, and they got on the show. And then whenever I learned that they were the guys from Lines in the Sky, I was like, what? Oh my God! Like it was such a serendipitous moment because I had only just discovered that band. Like
Nice.
I'm not kidding, probably like 2 months prior, and had been jamming it like a ton. And then so I learned the whole Nashville connection and the connection to Austin and all these other people. So it just blew my mind. And then when I found out you had Jesse on your album, I'm like,
Yep.
okay, what's going on? This really small world. But it is my understanding that Jesse and Bowman kind of, they get involved in a lot of projects, but is that kind of a result of the culture of going to a place like Belmont? Like, do they encourage you to join as many bands as possible and get out there and gig while you're still a student?
They definitely do. I wouldn't say it's about joining as many bands necessarily, as much as it is like putting your eggs in a lot of baskets. That's kind of how you make it as a musician, which I'm honest, even to this day, I'm still really figuring out, because my biggest problem is that all of my eggs go into my own baskets.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
that can only get you so far unless something blows up. So
right. So did you start your other band, Edge of Reality? Did that develop when you were at Belmont specifically?
no, actually, that was my main high school band. The Edge of Reality is a weird story, because it started out because of an English class that I was taking my freshman year of high school. It was a new high school for me. I was homeschooled for middle school, and then I went to actual high school for high school. So I knew nobody, and this English class, like right at the beginning of the first semester, was like, "We're going to make you do a project on ancient Greece," and the project is literally do anything your heart desires.
Okay.
Just make it about ancient Greece. And I was like, okay, anyone play music in this class? No. All right, you two get in my band anyway. we're gonna write some songs about ancient Greece. And so we did, and I made pretty much my two best high school friends are a result of that. And that we called that band Edge of Reality, and I just kept that name since, and have been swapping people in and out all the way through my life so far.
So it's Vicious Circle, correct? Is the main album you have out? Okay.
Yeah.
Are any of those songs from your high school English class?
No.
On that, they all okay. None of that. Because I was like, I listened to it a couple times now, and I'm thinking, I feel like it would have popped out at me if any of those songs were about ancient Greece. But
no, those songs are awful.
Well, I mean, was your class like blown away at the fact that you just decided to write like a?
I think they were blown away by the idea of it more than the actual quality of it, because nobody else did that, and they were bad because I didn't understand anything. I could play guitar, like I was decent at guitar, and I had no idea how audio works. That's actually the only reason I started getting into audio, is because I had to for that.
Wow.
So like I downloaded GarageBand,
man,
and I used some horrible drum loops for the drums because I didn't know how to program drums.
That's awesome. Okay, so you had Edge of Reality first, and then you go to Belmont, you get involved with all those guys. But this is the question I've been dying to ask, because I just don't understand the logistics of it. But how did you end up in Kyros, and how they're across the pond? I mean, every single one of the other people in Kyros are based out of London, correct?
Yeah, that or around there. So what happened there was they got the tip in Prog magazine for 2014, like best up and coming band, or I don't know exactly what the tip means, but they were called the tip for 2014. Like, be on the lookout for this band in 2014. They're going places.
Right.
And so I saw that on the internet or whatever. I was like, okay, I'll be on the lookout, like their Facebook page. And then around the time of like March 2014, March, April-ish, they put out an ad saying our guitar player is going to be doing a touring stage production of Mamma Mia for basically the rest of this year. And we have these festival dates lined up. We need someone to fill in for him. And I was like, okay, I can take a semester off of Belmont to do that, because I get to play, I'll get to open up for like Transatlantic and a bunch of other cool bands. Like, that'd be a cool experience. I get to like play some big shows. and whatnot. And I even talked to him, and he's like, "Yeah, we're actually writing our album at this time. You're more than welcome to contribute on that." And I was like,
Was that Vox Humana, or was that when they were still known as Synesthesia?
we were still known as Synesthesia, but it was the writing that for what became Vox Humana. So yeah, I auditioned and I got in. They were like, "Are you sure you understand this is in London? I see you're in Nashville." And I was like, "Yes, I understand. It's fine."
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I got picked, and then went over there for the whole of that period of time, and got on with them really well. They're still some of my best friends. They're great people.
But
And
the arrangement though is like, did the Mamma Mia guy, is he coming back into the band, or did he depart? You really are the guy now.
Yeah, it just kind of worked out that way. He never came back, and they never kicked me out, so I'm still in the band.
Wow, that's crazy. I think that's a really amazing thing, just to read a magazine article and be like, yeah, I don't care that they're in England, but that's fine. This is great. So I'm going to make a brief shout out to the Images and Words Discord, of course, which is how I got in touch with you. And everybody there is pretty hyped about your stuff. But I did, throughout the course of the week or so, I asked people, hey, what questions do you want me to ask Joey? And I did get some weird ones.
Ask me all the weird ones.
The only really, it's not even that weird, but Spec had asked, what is your favorite breakfast food?
French toast. Yep.
I was just like, that's the question you want me to ask? Fine, I'll ask it. But a lot of people, at least a handful of people, definitely wanted to know, how do you handle composing and just all the logistic differences being in the US versus the UK? I mean, everything from the time differences to collaborating with people. Like, are you doing a lot of Skype calls, or how do you make that work?
For Kyros specifically. So, yeah, the way we write in Kyros up to this point is pretty much every track that we've written, for the most part, is one of our songs that we bring to the table. And then the rest of the band kind of puts their spin on it. So it's not like, we're not the kind of band who writes by like getting in a room and playing together. That's just never been how any of us, we're all too meticulous and detail oriented to do that. So what'll happen is Adam is so fast at writing music. Like he'll pump out like 3 songs in like 2 weeks if he's on a roll. He's that kind of writer. Whereas I can do maybe like 1 song a week if I really know what I want to do. So what ends up happening is, Adam will put out, like, especially like for this upcoming album, he put out like maybe, I want to say 12 songs up for discussion. I put up 3, and Sam put up about 3 as well. And then from there, we kind of said, okay, which songs do we all want to do? And what do we want to change about said songs if we're going to do them? And it just all kind of worked out from there. Vox Humana was actually a lot easier to write because that was pretty much done while I was in the country the whole time. Whereas this album's been a lot more remote and kind of through the internet. We have our own little secret Facebook group that we do all our info in.
Right. Yeah, I was just amazed by that, thinking that you could just pull that out of your butt and be like, oh yeah, I'm just in a band, PS they're in London. Like, that's pretty crazy. So did when you were in Edge of Reality though and doing stuff at Belmont, were you playing a lot of gigs out, and is that what kind of grew your confidence to just decide to go, yeah, I'll go play some festivals in Germany and the UK? That sounds good.
I actually didn't gig out when I was at Belmont at all.
Really?
Which is it's a kind of a regret of mine. There's a couple of reasons for that. It's kind of, I won't get into that now, but it's like, confidence was never an issue. I'm dumb. I don't seem to have hang-ups like that. And it's like, I just like, okay.
That's probably what makes you a good musician. It's like, fuck it, I'm doing it. Yeah. Who cares?
It's useful, and it's also, I look back and I'm like, why did I do some certain things as a result of that?
I don't know. I couldn't do that. That's for sure. But that's pretty crazy. So in terms of, I know I do want to bring the focus back to your solo album, because that's kind of what you asked me to talk about. But as a listener of Kyros, I do enjoy that band, and it's definitely the last large album. That was a double album, and like, I'm especially amazed that based on your writing process where you don't get the chance to sit in a room, that you guys can all just come together and present a song? And then do you like assign that greater, larger concept after the fact? Do you all just kind of have a meeting of the minds, or did somebody go, hey, this is what I think the concept should be for Vox Humana, and let's all write songs about that?
Okay. As far as how the story of Vox Humana started, it kind of, I don't want to say it was like last minute, but it developed over the whole course of writing, and it was not the starting point at all. Adam was working on this pretty long song, and through us working on that song, we kind of got this idea. Okay, let's make this even longer song about the 7 deadly sins. That seems like something that could be fun. So it was like, okay, so this is going to have 8 parts, because we're going to have one of them be instrumental and be like an overture, which became "Speak to Me." I'm basically talking about what became the Human Voice second disc of the album. So he's like, okay, so what's going to happen is I've already written what's essentially the first 3 sins or whatever. Joey, you go away and write wrath and pride. Sam, you go away and write sloth and what's the one? What was it? Gluttony. Yes. No, it wasn't gluttony. Which one did he get? Sloth and lust. Okay, so then we did that. We finished all the music for that. And as like the actual lyrics of how we're talking about the 7 deadly sins started happening, that's kind of when the light bulb went off for what the story of Vox Humana actually was, with this little robot kid and this guy who hates human nature for trying to program him to be the perfect human by programming him to be the opposite of a human.
And hence my favorite song title, "Technology Killed the Kids."
Yes. And meanwhile, in addition to this 45-minute song that we also had like 5. How many are on the first disc? 5 other shorter songs that we all wrote at the same time. And I was like, actually, I know exactly how, if we tweak the lyrics just a little bit on each song, it'll work for this story. So then it was like, well, it's a double concept album now.
Oh, perfect. So that is kind of a trope, essentially, with a lot of modern prog. But I mean, how do you change it up? How do you keep it fresh? Because I looked up some of your influences, and your particular influences are like all over the place, and I love it, because you have classical composers, you have modern prog people, you got jazz fusion, you got all kinds of stuff in there. Like, how do all those influences come together to create something that's easily identifiable as a progressive rock album, but how do you make it all work and still feel fresh?
That's a good question. I don't really know if there's a trick to it. It's just kind of, I guess I've always been pretty good at, like, when I listen to something, I'm always thinking about what aspects of it resonate with me, and those will get kind of filed away in my head in a certain way. So I'm constantly learning, I guess, about the very basics of music when I listen to any genre. So it's not about, so when I hear like a certain idea that's used a lot in jazz fusion or whatever, I'm not thinking of that idea in a jazz fusion context. I'm thinking of it at the most root basic, what is happening. Now let's take that. Let's not take the phrasing that is specific to jazz or whatever. Let's not take the way this melody works on its own. So because I don't want to rip off specific ideas, but I just want to what I do want to take from it is the skeleton. And you can't, nobody's going to be able to like identify the skeleton except for me. I'll be like, okay, I got that idea because I heard this do that in this certain way. But yeah, so that's kind of, in my opinion, that's how you sound like yourself and not like other people. I've always tried to steer really clear of saying, let me do a bit like this song or like this band. Like, I don't think about influences when I'm writing at all. I think that's so important if you don't want to sound like you're ripping people off.
Yeah.
You just think of general ideas.
Interesting. I would have thought it was the other way around. Like, hey, I love Frost, so let me write like a drum part like Craig Blundell would play. Like that, I don't know. I guess that's just what I thought. But
yeah,
is there?
And a lot of people get a lot of success with that. It's just, at least for me, it's like, if I do that, then it's like, that's too many very specific parameters that are now on the idea, because I have to then listen to their stuff and be like,
that's that lick I stole.
Yeah, I have to listen to Craig Blundell's playing and be like, here's what he does in this situation. If I'm going to sound like him, I have to also do that in that situation. And yeah, to me, that's just like, that's not as fun as like, what if I'm like, okay, I want the drums to transition from this part to this part, like do like a drum fill or whatever. And maybe I get there for this reasons based on whatever my base concept is, blah, blah, blah.
That
It's
makes
hard to
sense.
just explain, but I hope you get what I mean.
Yeah, I think I get it. It is always hard for me to understand, I guess, in a sense, because I don't really write my own music, but I'm a great
Sure.
consumer of music and appreciator of music. So I haven't taken the let me listen and then try to write something like that down, but I certainly have like a playlist of things that inspire me, even though it hasn't
Sure.
barfed out onto a page yet. But it's just like, if I did write music,
Yeah.
it would probably sound a little bit like this. And it's kind of a balancing act, I guess. Is there anything you consider, though, to be sort of your signature, or like whether it's a particular effect or gear or something?
There's one kind of musical concept that I keep finding myself going back to, and this is another thing that I always try to do, is anytime I realize that I have a certain habit in terms of composing something, I will actively try to not do that with the next thing. Like, all my albums have this, like especially on Vicious Circle, I wrote a lot in 6/8 as a time signature. Like 6/8 is my favorite time signature, but around that time, for whatever reason, just everything I was writing was in 6. And actually, Jesse Peck, the other guitarist slash composer for Edge of Reality, was like, "Hey, dude, everything you're writing is in 6. Can we try some other stuff?" And it's like, "Oh, you're right. Okay." So now that my mentality is, now that I know that that's a habit, now I can just be conscious of it. I can do it when it's necessary, but not just because I feel like that's the only thing I can do. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
Right. No, that makes sense.
what was the question?
It was just like, do you feel like you have a signature thing?
Oh yeah, okay. But one habit that I am conscious of, but I keep doing anyway because I feel like nobody uses it quite the same way, is a lot of my songs, especially if there's like a verse 1 and a verse 2 aspect of it, the verses, they will be made up of the same material, but all of the melodies or parts will be on different instruments each time.
Oh, yeah, I do like when that's done.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say nobody does this ever, because that's definitely not true, but it's, for whatever there's something about the way that I hear it done when I do it that I feel like I don't hear as much from other people, so it doesn't bother me as much if I'm like, yeah, that'll work here again.
That's kind of true, though. Like in your solo album, like I was saying at the start, you do have some callbacks and there's different melodies. Like if I'm thinking about, there's kind of like 2 main motifs, at least 2 that I can recall. And
there are 2 that appear a lot, yeah.
Yeah, and I think you like play one on flute, and then it comes back later on keys, and then comes back later on something else. I've always really appreciated that continuity aspect in terms of concept albums. That being said, since you're involved in all these projects, the solo work, Kyros, Edge of Reality, whatever, is there a really emotional attachment for any of those 3 in particular, or like how do those different projects fill different needs for your relationship with music?
That's a good question. That's definitely something I've been thinking about a lot now. I would definitely say right now I value working on solo stuff the most, because I'm a very control freak kind of person. And I guess Gone was kind of the my first acknowledgement of like, okay, I think I can make an album on my own terms, completely exactly what I want to do, and get it all made and done. And I don't need like the band structure necessarily. And I think I've achieved that, and I feel like I can. That to me is kind of where my head is at right now. I really like the idea of just making my ideas come out. And band structures are great. There's a lot of positive things about having a group of guys to go through who are all talented and all have their own ideas that are different from yours. And great stuff happens there. Both bands are releasing an album this year as well, and they're all good. But I think right now I really value the idea of just getting all the ideas, getting to have complete control of the final product.
Right. Yeah, and I think some people would say that's a bad thing. Like, oh, well, you just want to work on your own and not collaborate with people. But that's obviously not true. I mean, you did have some collaboration with your solo album, but I guess in a sense you can really create what you exactly want to create.
Yeah, exactly. Like, obviously, Robin, who went in and played the drums, he didn't play everything exactly like I wrote it. He came in with a lot of ideas. But, it was ultimately me who was like, that idea doesn't work for X and X reasons. And, once I said it, that was the way it was, because he was a hired gun for the album. So I could pick exactly which ideas I thought worked for my overall vision and which ones didn't. And a lot of his ideas did work, and they got used. And that's that kind of working environment, I think, is where I excel the most at. And I think I'm figuring that out a lot in recent times.
No, that's great. I think that's fine. You're an artist. You get to have full creative control over your work. Regarding some of the technical stuff on your solo album, and these were some of the images and words questions too, but I was also curious. There's some kind of like crazy vocal effects and just lots of different distortions and everything. How did you do that? And do you have any favorite parts of that?
Well, I mix in Pro Tools, and it's all done in the box. I don't have any outboard gear at all. Okay. There's a bit in Find Him where the drums kind of shrink down really small and get really bit crushed, and then pan across the stage, pan across from left to right for like half a second. And that was an effect that I worked on for a long time just to get just the way I heard it in my head. So I'm pretty proud of how that came out. It sounds like it goes by like that. You'll barely realize it's a thing. But for whatever reason.
But if you're listening with good headphones on, though, you'll notice it. Like you designed it that way.
Yeah, exactly. You'll hear it go like from one side to the other, like, and finally land on this really like distorted snare that's just like way over often.
Are there artists you listen to that have like put that idea in your head? I'm just trying. I'm not an audio person per se, so I don't maybe pay attention to that stuff as much. Because you talk to some prog people and they're like, oh, I love that album because it was mixed by Steven Wilson or whoever. Like, I don't have that affinity for it, but did a particular song like plant that idea?
Not particularly. Well, I wouldn't say it was a specific song. It's just hearing little ear candy moments. Like, I would actually say, honestly, stuff like that is an influence of working with Adam from Kyros. Adam is the best I've ever met at stuff like that. He just hears these little tiny micro detail ideas that'll just blow your mind if you're looking out for them. And every time he'll just throw it in there in like the perfect moment, and you're just like, how did you even think to do that? I guess it's not even like a note. It's not even about notes almost at this point. It's like pure sound. So because I want to work with him a lot, I start to hear those ideas now too, because I've gotten a lot of that thinking from talking to him about music and stuff. So I would say that's definitely an Adam moment more than anything else.
I believe it took you, what you said, like 5 years or so to get through the solo album?
Yeah.
Was that just like a result of, hey, I got to finish this and I'm going through school and I'm touring and stuff? Or did you kind of like set it and table it and come back to it?
It's mostly the second thing, because I started writing the album slightly before joining Kyros, like the second semester of sophomore year Belmont. I wrote like the first half of it around that time, and then joined Kyros, and we started working on that stuff for the rest of 2014. And then in 2015, I was like, okay, I really want to finish Gone. So I knew what the story was by that point, so I had to just write the second half of it. Basically, everything from Find Him to the end of the album was written in about 2 months. At the start of 2015, and then the album was completely written in 2015. And then,
oh wow,
yeah. So then it was like, all right, Robin, I talked to you about this like a year ago. You ready to record drums for this album? And he's like, yeah, man, let's do it. So we recorded the drums, and they weren't the best recorded. We recorded them at his house, and they were like fine. There was nothing like awful about them, but I sat on those for a while I recorded my guitar parts for the first time, and then over the course of that year, I was basically, okay, just kind of refining the arrangements or refining the instruments. And then I got my Axe effects, and I was like, okay, I'm going to re-record all the guitars with the Axe effects, because I have so much more control over how the guitars come out now. So I did that, and then I was like, okay, well, these are sounding really good. The drums are still like way worse than everything else, not because of Robin, but because they were very amateurly done. So I was like, okay, Dean, who's our Kyros' manager, who runs his own studio. I was like, Dean, let me record drums at your place. How much will you charge? And it's like, okay. So we went and recorded drums again in like 20s. Like this was like the beginning of 2017 already at this point. So then that was done, and then I spent the entirety of the rest of 2017 all the way until like the beginning of 2018 mixing it, and then I sent it off to mastering, which took a while, and then I had my brother start working on the artwork, which he has a ton of stuff he's doing anyway, which took a while. And this entire time I'm trying to find label support to release the album because I didn't want to deal with releasing it myself, and that went nowhere. So combination of waiting for artwork and trying to get label support delayed it all the way until now. So now I finally actually self-released it.
Wow. That's amazing. See, that's amazing. Even more amazing that bands can write an album and release one album every year when you really think about how long it takes just to finish it. And even if you have it done and it's out the door, yeah, you got to wait on all the business stuff, the management stuff. So then when, oh man, everything you just said though, that resonates with me a lot. Cause I struggle with that when I used to draw more. It's kind of like, when is done? You know, It's like, do you try to turn off the perfectionist in yourself and just go, you know what, it's good enough, put it out the door? Like, what made you finally go, all right, we already recorded drums twice, we did the guitars twice, like, this is enough, I'm done?
That's a good question, because I had that moment probably 50 times over the course of 2018 and late 2017. Mixing it was really hard, mostly because I was trying to simultaneously really up my abilities at mixing, because the only album I mixed before that, the only one I count that I mixed before that was Vicious Circle, which I don't think really holds up as a mix even now. But honestly, I kind of don't think Gone does either. You know, so it was a lot. It took me very long to work on the mix of Gone because I was constantly learning new stuff and implementing it and going back and saying, okay, that was a bad approach. Let me reapproach it this way. Which hopefully I'm at a point where now when I mix an album, because I'm working on the next one already, it will not be like that.
Yeah, it's not gonna like make you lose sleep at night. Like, oh, yeah. I should have done that differently, because I go through that a lot.
Yeah, I feel like I'm at the point where I have the basics down enough that now it'll just be a matter of getting the actual artistic stuff right, and not just a matter of like, how do I make this sound listenable?
Wow. Oh man, that hits me. That hits me like no other. Well, actually, I did it right before we kind of rescheduled because we forgot about the time difference. In that hour from when I thought I was interviewing you to now, I re-recorded a drum cover of another song that I had just played yesterday, and I'm like, nah, I don't really like it. Let me do it again. So I totally get that.
What's the cover?
There's a local band called Whorehound. They're like a doom metal band, and they just put out a fantastic album at the end of last year that I've been like constantly jamming. But I know all the people in the band too, so it's more fun when you're like, hey guys, I
played your song.
Made you a thing.
Yay.
Thanks.
That's awesome.
Great. Yeah, so watch, I'll probably jinx myself and then it'll never see the light of day.
Well, if you do put it up, send it to me because I'd love to watch it.
There you go. Fine. Well, I'm still kind of learning this stuff too. Like there's a lot to be said for independent artists where you got to learn all this stuff yourself. Like,
yeah,
you might have the passion and the drive, but you got to save the money for the gear. You got to teach yourself how to do it or go to school to do it. And I think that's what we forget is like some of our favorite artists, you just think that they snap their fingers and suddenly they're Neil Morse. Like it doesn't work that way. Like they have to all start from somewhere too.
Yeah, you're only hearing the part after they did all that. So
right. Well, so your ambitions though as a musician, I think it's safe to say this is what you want to do full time. This is what you are attempting to do full time. What's one of your big challenges that you have to overcome to be able to see yourself as a professional musician and to really make this your career?
Well, I need to be better about finding work as a musician, because I like I said, I have so many of my own baskets to put eggs in that I kind of forget to look for actually lucrative ones to put eggs in. And up to this point, it's been kind of like, it's been fine, but I'm getting to the point where it's like, it's not as fine anymore. I have more monetary obligations that I have to think seriously about. So yeah, it's kind of that. I'm really looking into starting to get into film scoring seriously. That's that's something that I've been interested in for a while, and now it seems to be about the time to really care about it.
I think you're on the right track because there's definitely some very cinematic moments in your solo album, and I actually was going to ask you that whenever you talked about like the little bit crushing drum part. Like, I think you had mentioned it's in your Kyros bio. You're like a Miyazaki fan, correct? Yeah, I'm not a film buff, so I'm going to get a lot of this wrong, but
that's okay.
It was like the soundtracks of those types of movies. Was that really what drew you into it more so than the film?
I wouldn't say it's more what drove me into it, but it's definitely a big part of it. Miyazaki, if I had to pick my single greatest creative hero, it'd be him.
He's a good hero to have. I'm so woefully like uneducated on Miyazaki stuff, but
I can show you the world.
Yeah, he's a huge influence for a lot of people, but
yeah,
artistically he's a big influence too.
There's so much about just what he's able to get across in his work that speaks to me on a level no one else can.
Yeah.
And Joe Hisaishi's music is a huge part of that as well. Like you almost can't think of one without the other. They're so perfectly made for each other. And Joe Hisaishi is one of my biggest musical influences as well because his music is godlike. He's definitely my favorite film composer, like no question.
Okay.
Second place would probably be Danny Elfman because Danny Elfman is bonkers.
Yes. I actually didn't know about Oingo Boingo until very recently, and I was like, wait, is that Danny Elfman?
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's Danny Elfman. Okay, I had no idea, but God, that guy is a screwed up genius.
Yep. Actually, fun fact: I went to there was like a film composer like seminar that happened in Nashville. It's happened I went to it twice now. It's like a yearly thing, and they got Danny Elfman to do like a Skype in.
Oh, that's cool.
And like basically take questions, and he told this story that apparently I assume you've heard like the Tim Burton Batman soundtrack.
Yes.
Yeah, like, that overture, that crazy like super like dun dun ba da ba da ba ba.
Oh yeah, vaguely.
Yeah, the big Batman overture. It's like this really crazy piece where like the instruments are just like weaving in and out of each other, and it's just this really well written thing. And at the time, he was literally accused of having a ghostwriter because they couldn't believe that this rock musician could write that.
Wow.
And he was like, nope, every note was mine.
Wow. That's like I love weird, talented creatives like that who, okay, like Jeff Goldblum's a great example. He's like killing it right now with his jazz band, and I'm just like,
really? I had no idea.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. He's actually coming to Pittsburgh. My friend, I was at a party last night, and she's like, oh, I get to go see my husband, Jeff Goldblum. Like, she's like obsessed with Jeff Goldblum, I think as an actor first, but the fact that he's also
and a husband.
Yeah. A really talented jazz musician and singer. It's just like,
wow.
Save some talent for the other people. Okay. Like,
yeah, I'll have to listen to that. I'm curious. I'm so curious now.
He put out an album at the end of last year, I think, and I'm like, okay, well, I grew up listening to jazz and smooth jazz. Let's see how this is, and then I'm like, oh, okay, this is pretty good. But I'm sure his notoriety kind of helps him a little bit there too. But so with film scoring though, is there a particular style that you want to aim for? Because I mean, you think about like film trailers, and there's a lot of stereotypes. Definitely. I guess. I mean, like, I love Two Steps from Hell, but at the same time, all their music is like coming this summer. Blah, blah. Like, it's just that epic style that. I'm not saying anybody could do it, but there's a lot of film scoring that sounds very similar.
Well, that stuff is really fun to write. It's super easy to write. It's hard to execute because you have to make it sound huge. So that's its own like learning curve and like understanding how to orchestrate things so they sound big and everything melds a certain way. But as far as like melodies and like core concepts, it's pretty simple stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's always just like yes. So I've been writing a lot of stuff like that, just to kind of get practiced on it. Anything orchestral, I think, is my main thing. Like movies, a lot these days have more synthesis, especially once you get into certain genres of movies. It's less about the orchestra, which is cool. There's a lot of stuff that I really like about that, but it's not as much my interest as writing for like a big orchestra. So anything where I get to do that would be my ideal, but I'll do any of it.
Yeah, and I don't even really understand that much about how the whole process works, but I know things have become a lot easier just with technology now. You can compose for orchestra without having an orchestra, you know.
Yeah, you can make pretty convincing fake orchestras as well.
Well, Jeremy Soule is definitely one of my top composers. The guy who did all the Elder Scrolls
Oh, okay.
soundtracks, and I didn't know for years that the Morrowind soundtrack, Oblivion, and maybe even Skyrim. I'm not sure because that one's a lot more recent, but at least Morrowind and Oblivion. None, I believe, I could be wrong, and I'm going on the record, so I hope I'm not wrong, but I believe that like 90% of the instrumentation for those soundtracks was all synthesized.
That would not surprise me.
And the strings are so lush, and I've literally listened to those soundtracks like 4,000 times, and I never picked up on it. It sounded completely real to me, and I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, you can. It's not easy at all to make that happen, but it's totally possible with today's technology. And even better if you can then get like a real violinist in to quote unquote augment the samples, to basically get that feel of the real instrument that you need to mix in with the fakery that makes it sound huge.
Yeah, and is that kind of the accepted practice? Like, I only just recently heard about how a lot of people will double track guitars to kind of beef up the sound. Is that what they do when you synthesize stuff? Okay.
Yeah, well, that's what a lot of people do. That's actually what I did for Gone as well. Like the violin parts in Gone, I pretty much had my friend come in. It's a pretty common practice. You still have to, obviously, that's more expensive than just doing it only samples, which you can get away with, but it's like, if you have the opportunity to mix them, it's like best of both worlds.
I'm sure it just increases that impact so much.
Yeah.
So you said you are already writing your next solo album.
Yes.
Do you have any juicy tidbits you can share with the class, or it's fine if you don't want to give a lot of it away, but I'm curious.
No, it's fine. Well, the reason I couldn't do an hour ago is because I was working on a crazy percussion thing.
Okay.
I took Edge of Reality's drummer, who's also my roommate. He has kit set up. I just grabbed his floor tom and like 10 of his auxiliary percussion things, and was just trying to create this weird percussive tapestry. So that's a thing I'm working on for one of the songs. And I got somewhere with that. What else? There's one song where I used my own voice and vocoded it. So it doesn't sound like me at all.
Does it sound like Cynic, or is it
no
totally not that kind of vocoder? Okay.
No. It'd be more like Cynic if you didn't have his real voice mixed in, if it was just the vocoder part.
Yeah. The hi, I'm Paul Masvidal, resident alien.
Yeah.
Here.
Yep. And what else have I done? One of the songs will be a song that was supposed to be for Kyros, but they didn't want to do it. Which is fine because it's really weird and really, really technical. Way more technical than anything on Gone.
But these are just kind of bits and pieces you have right now. Like, are you thinking about the overarching concept?
It won't be a concept. It'll be, this album is getting out a lot of musical demons more than anything else. Like things that they've been kind of building up in my head that I want to try.
So when is the song happening that has like a kazoo and a didgeridoo and zither, like all the really weird stuff that's just been piling up?
It's funny you say that. There's a song that I'm working on that is comprised mostly of kazoo and slide whistle.
Call it. That's it, folks. You heard it here on Tapestry. Kazoo.
It may not
prog is next.
Whether it actually makes it on the album, we'll see. But I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Well, I'm holding you to that.
It might have to be on the album now.
Slide whistle. Well, it sounds kind of whimsical, though. Now, like you listen to Arion and a lot of that stuff. Like that's some of the prog that I'm still finding hard to digest. But I love whenever people can pull it off. It's like, hey, this is already a weird, ostracized genre of music. Let's just make it even weirder.
Exactly. Yeah, I do like a lot of Arion stuff. Human Equation is one of my favorite albums.
I have the reputation in Images and Words for being an Arion hater.
Gotcha.
But I'm working on it. I do appreciate the fact that they're like just one insanely talented, but that's like, I feel like that's every musician's goal in terms of one, technicality, two, like, how many session musicians can I bring in, and three, how many crazy concept albums can I write, like, spanning 20 years now? Just, they're like, they're like the people to beat, kind of.
Yeah. If you want to talk about specifically rock operas, he's the only one really doing it in that way, apart from a couple other people who are pretty much doing it because he did it. Like, he's including myself. I actually discovered him when I first started writing Gone, because I had this idea for, like, every character is their own vocalist. I was like, has anyone done that yet? And then I found Arion, and I was like, well, someone's already done it, but I don't care. I'm still going to do it.
Right. I always like that as a concept, though. It's, I don't know.
Yeah. It's like a musical theater sort of
thing.
Yeah,
it's like, well, it is. I guess it is a rock opera in that sense.
Yeah.
Who are some of your other big influences, just in general?
Ooh, well, these days, my favorite band currently, since like around last May, and has been going strong all the way through there, is this band called Cardiacs.
Oh, we've talked about them in the server, I think,
nice.
But I don't really listen to them.
I don't even know how to describe them. They're basically this guy called Tim Smith, who in the 80s put together this punk band. It's like, imagine if you like had this punk kid, this kid who, like, his main, like, drive in life was punk music, but his influences were like Monty Python and, like, really out there 20th century crazy, like, experimental music.
Okay.
And just all three of those things come together into this hilarious, totally bonkers, and, like, some of the most intelligent music I've ever heard.
Is it stylistically, though? Is it like mostly rock, or is it folk, or what? It's rock.
All in the context of a punk instrumentation. So, you know, guitar, bass, drums. There's actually a saxophonist originally, and some weird percussion. And oh god, they are so good.
Cardiacs. Okay, I'm gonna have to look that up, because I have heard of them, but I literally knew nothing about them.
Yeah, they're not everyone's cup of tea. Like, I can't convince almost anyone else to like them, but.
Well, there's a lot of bands like that, though, like The Residents and
very much same camp.
Stuff like Mr. Bungle, Secret Chiefs, like all the Mike Patton projects. Like, there's just a certain layer of music where you almost listen to it and I'm like, am I even enjoying this? You know, I can appreciate it, but I'm not sure if my ears are actually all that happy listening to it. But
yeah, that's fair.
I give people a lot of credit that can really write the, like, shake it up type of stuff that's just so out there that, you know, it's almost like another layer of societal acceptance. Like, I mean, you typically don't go over to your friend's house and listen to Ruins or Cardiacs or stuff
unless
like
you have
that.
very specific kind of friends.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, I feel like your friends might be into that.
Oh yeah, I've forced them to.
That's what I do to all my friends too.
Exactly. But let's see. I don't know. Apart from, I'm trying to think of like some as far as non-proggy stuff that I've been listening to a lot. There's this K-pop band I've actually been really obsessed with called Akmu. They're like their music is definitely pop, but it's like it's just really good. I don't know how. It's kind of hard to say. Just, their arrangements are really dense and really varied. Like they'll have one song that will be like mostly guitar driven. Then they'll have one song that is like orchestral piano with some weird, like, they'll have like a whistle thrown in there, and just really good melodies and writing on top of it, and it's all in Korean, so it's good stuff.
So it doesn't matter what they're saying.
No, I don't care about lyrics. Lyrics suck.
Lyrics suck.
Yeah, you heard it from me here.
Is that your least favorite part of music writing, is coming up with lyrics?
Yes, I'm very bad at
it. Vigorously nodding his head, yes, I don't like lyric writing.
I'm just bad at it. I want to get better at it, but it takes me so long to come up with anything.
So you hate lyric writing, but is it just like you feel like you're stifling what you really want to say, or?
I usually just can't find a way to put what I want to say into words. It's just really hard for me. I feel like I can't speak most of the time because I'm just like constantly being like, actually, is that even what I'm saying? So
I feel that.
It's that kind of thing. So I always start from, like, if I go to write lyrics, it's like, okay, I know what I want to talk about, but how do I make it into lyrics?
Yeah.
And there will be random times where it'll be really easy for me. Like there's the vocoder track I mentioned on the next album. I wrote the whole lyrics to that song in about an hour. because it was just one of those lucky moments like, hey, it's all coming together. But most of the time I'm like sitting at my computer and I'll write like a line and then I'll have nothing. I'll go away for a few minutes, come back, still have nothing, jam on the piano for a bit while thinking about it, go back, still have nothing, go to sleep, wake up next morning, maybe get another line. Like, it's so bad.
Well, that's a question I tend to ask my guests too. Is, do you have a particular ritual when it comes to music writing? And some people have this, very specific thing that they do, and that's like what gets them inspired. But a lot of people just kind of get that lightning rod moment where they're like, oh, hold on, I got to stop and write this down. How do you tend to work?
I guess my process is pretty much anytime I'm playing an instrument or I come up with usually piano or guitar, I'll come up with an idea and then I will record it on my voice memos on my phone. And I've got this log of just random melodies and riffs just stored on there that goes back years. And that's just something that I can pull from. And then beyond that, my philosophy is just do a little bit every day.
Whether it's crap or not, you just kind of do it. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't matter how much you get done. Most days I'll get like maybe 15 seconds of a track done if nothing's really flowing. But I'll get something. And, maybe I'll go back and not like those 15 seconds the next day. But most days I can get like a pretty solid next idea down. And then sometimes it's a lot more. Like some songs come together really fast and others it's pretty piece by piece. But if you do it every day, then it's like you don't have to worry about just, do I have the inspiration or not? It's just it's not a consideration. Yeah. And then I always have that catalog to pull from.
You already have it at your fingertips. Yeah. Right. I just always hear, some people, I'm expecting them to be like, oh, well, first I do yoga and then I stand on my head and suddenly this comes out. But I don't know. It's different for everybody.
Yeah, I've definitely not worked out any foolproof method like that.
So aside from all these projects you have going on, and, trying to do the film scoring stuff, I usually have my two kind of reach questions towards the end of the interview, but one I like to ask is, despite everything that's going on right now, if you could collaborate with any particular artist right now, who would you want to do it?
Oh,
like regardless of time or money constraints or anything, just dream collaboration.
And they have to be alive and capable of collaborating right now? Just okay, let me think. This is a can of worms. Okay. The first person that came to mind is Tim Smith, the guy who writes everything for Cardiacs. The reason I had to ask that question is because he's actually been paralyzed for the last decade or so. Yeah, he had a really bad stroke that left him paralyzed.
But he's still writing music through that?
No, not since then. Yeah, they've been trying. He's been getting treatment this whole time, and they're hoping to essentially get a cure so he can finish this album he's been working on. He was working on when it happened, but it's been 10 years now. So
that's like every musician's nightmare, isn't it?
I know.
Oh.
It's out there in the ether. There's all this music we haven't heard.
Well, let's say, okay, so I'll keep Tim Smith in my thoughts, but realistically then, I guess, if you had to choose somebody else, who would it be?
Somebody today. Okay.
I'm only asking that, I guess, because it's not that I'm not satisfied with your answer. It's just because I got really sad thinking, this guy's never going to write the rest of his album.
I know. I'm so sad. I'm sad, too. Okay, I can think of two people that would be cool for different reasons. Devin Townsend would be one, even though notoriously he's a bad collaborator.
Real? Is that true?
Kind of. He's actually, I relate to his mentality a lot. He's very good when it comes to his own projects that he gets people in to do their part on. He'll he'll oversee everything and make things good. And again, I never really met him, so this is just what I've gathered from interviews and watching him work. Maybe he'd think differently of his own process, but I definitely read stories where he'll be asked to collaborate on someone else's project, and he's not so much about that usually. Even he was on one Arion album, and the only way he would even do it is if he could write all his own melodies and lyrics, which is not normally how Arion works. Arion usually writes everything and gives the parts to the singers, but Devin was like, I'm not interested unless I can do that. So, and Arion was like, okay, and those parts are so good on that album.
Fine, you're Devin Townsend, so
yeah,
here you go. Wow, I didn't know that.
So I guess more than anything, I would just love to pick his brain. I don't know if any collaborating would happen, but that's fine. But then another person I would love to collaborate with is Imogen Heap.
Dude, my favorite artist of all time.
Are you serious?
Pretty much. Like, I feel like I feel like I'm lying to the entire world, because depending on my surroundings, my favorite artist is either Imogen Heap or Protest the Hero. If I'm with a bunch of metalheads, Protest the Hero is my favorite band. If I'm with a bunch of people who have no idea who that is, I'm like, oh, I love Imogen Heap. You know that What You Say song? That one. Like, oh man. She's amazing.
She is the way I always, if people ask me like who she is, I basically say she's a musical genius disguised as a pop star.
That is the perfect way to say it too. People ask me all the time, they're like, "Will you like listen to prog stuff?" And I'm like, I don't just listen to prog, but I'm like, I always make the argument that Imogen Heap is as progressive as it gets when it comes to music, because she just does stuff that nobody does. Like, I always use the example of the listening chair. Who else writes a song that chronicles her life, and then she's going to add to it every 7 years until she dies? That song ends when someone kills Imogen Heap. Like, she just does stuff that blows my mind.
Yep. I assume you've watched like the whole documentary about like how that came to be. The little like 20-minute one on YouTube.
I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen most of it. Yeah,
that wasn't the original concept. The original concept was like she wanted to find out like what song hasn't been written yet. She wanted to ask a bunch of different people like, what song do you feel like doesn't exist yet? And there was no common answer at all. But what she did figure out was that each, depending on what stage the person was in their life, there would be certain trends. So she's like, okay, that gave her the idea to do like stages of life.
Yeah. So that's how that came about. Yeah. I think she's incredible.
I agree. That track is like maybe top 5 ever for me.
I was going to just ask you then, well, actually, this is a perfect segue to wrap this up, but I'm asking the pre-question to this question. What is your favorite Imogen Heap album?
Sparks.
Sparks, man. Sparks is probably like number 2 for me, but I love...
Speak for Yourself?
Speak for Yourself, thank you, yeah.
Yeah.
Sparks is such a great album, though.
Yeah, I do go back and forth on those two a lot, but currently I would say Sparks. It's so hard to say, because on the one hand, I feel like Speak for Yourself is more consistent. The variedness and like the high peaks of Sparks, I prefer at this point.
Yeah, well, it's not that there's no filler on Sparks, but like stuff like Climb to Sac Tang and some of the more like instrumental interludes, I can see how it's sort of like, I guess you could do without those, but they're just, I don't know. Well, ZZ Chino's too. I think she wrote that song after she went to China or something. Like, she just has all these cool ways of expressing herself through music that I think, I don't know. She is like definitely a gateway artist for me, for people that I hang out with who are more like traditional metalheads or progressive music listeners. I'm like, I don't care if you don't like pop music, you're going to like her pop music. It's just so cerebral and so different than what everybody else is doing. So that does lead me to, usually my final question I ask everybody is, if you could listen to 3 albums for the rest of your life, you have to just pick 3. You can't listen to anything else. What would they be?
Oh.
I know. I see the look on your face.
Okay. Sing to God by Cardiacs. Because I feel like if I would... Sing to God. It's their double album.
Okay.
So I'm going to be picking mostly pretty long ones.
You get more for your money.
Yeah, exactly. Probably Act 4 by the Deer Hunter. The Deer Hunter is probably my favorite band. Actually,
really? Okay.
If I had to pick a favorite band. Yeah, I love the Deer Hunter.
They are a great band.
Yeah. And Act 4.
Why Act 4 over any of the others?
It's their best one, I think. What would I do for a third one? Maybe Empath when that comes out. Maybe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the next Devi album.
I might gamble on that because I believe in that album so hard.
I have never had a guest answer an album that hasn't been released yet. Like, that's how you know you're a true fanboy.
Yeah. Well, have you been following like the build up to that album? It's like.
I've been watching some of the I forget his name, the guy who's doing the drums for that.
Oh yeah, Samus, I think his name.
Yeah, Samus, and oh god, he's an incredible drummer. But yeah, I've been watching some of that and some of the stuff with him and Ackerfeld, and just. I don't even really, honestly, I should lose my prog card. I don't even really like Devin Townsend that much. I think he's just a little too theatrical for me. But he's like the prog cool uncle. Like,
Totally is.
he just has a hand in everything.
Yep.
I mean, from producing to writing to inspiring, and the guy just seems like such a neat person to maybe not, like you said, to work with, but as a creative force in the genre that we both listen to, he's just unmatched.
Yeah, I agree. And just like basically every piece of information that has been released about this album and like how it was made, and because I've been keeping up really closely with it, I would not be surprised if it's his best work ever. I've never like I said, I've never like had this much faith that an album will be good until this. And the other good thing about Devin Townsend is I can almost just take 3 of his albums because all of his albums are so different from each other.
Oh, he does so many, like, just in his different projects. Okay, well, fine. I'll extend that question to you. What are your 3 favorite Devin Townsend albums?
All right, Deconstruction, because I need just some insanity in life. That album is completely bonkers, and in the best way. Epicloud, and okay.
I'm thinking in my head what your next answer is going to be, but
there's one that I want to pick in terms of top 3. Are we doing favorite or are we doing Desert Island?
I mean, you could say favorite, really.
Okay, top 3 favorite would be those 2 and Infinity.
Infinity. Oh, okay. I was, for some reason, thinking you might answer Ghost, but I wasn't sure. Ghost is actually my favorite Debbie album, but that's because it's so different than all his other stuff.
Have you listened to Casualties of Cool?
I have actually listened to Casualties of Cool. I couldn't, not that I couldn't, but I didn't make it through the whole album. I was driving when I was listening to it, and it felt kind of long and similar to me, but I think it's cool that he even has an album that you could like remotely call a country album, kind of like country rock.
Yeah.
The guy can do anything. It really.
Yeah, exactly. It's really nuts. But even if you don't go back through that album, I recommend listening to the penultimate track, the second to last track. It's, what's it called? What? The Bridge. I think it's called The Bridge. Definitely check that track out. It sounds nothing like the rest of the album. From listening to the whole album is really good, but even on its own is one of my favorite tracks of his.
I'm putting it on my list. That's one of the things I love most, not only from doing this podcast, but just talking to people about music, is I'm like a fountain of music recommendations myself, but I love when people give me music recommendations because I don't know, it just kind of tells you about that person a little bit, but
Yeah, it definitely does. If you listen to Sing to God, let me know immediately what you think.
I'm gonna stick it on my list for sure. But are there any other things you want to get out for the record?
Let's see. You should. No, not really. I'm good.
Yeah, Joey, I've really enjoyed having you on, and I'm looking forward to kind of everything you do next because you're keeping yourself busy. So
definitely.
Thank you for coming on, and catch you on the flip side.
No problem. Thanks so much.
Here's a different track to close things out. Just a little bit of Joey shredding on The Lamb, the Badger, and the Bee by Kyros. Make sure you check out all of Joey's projects, including his own album Gone, Kyros, and Edge of Reality at the links I'll post with the episode. Thanks for listening. Until next time.